So welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Brandy. I'm the host of the Be Real Babe Show, a spinoff of the Be Real Babe podcast. And today we are doing some internet insanity and going through the next 2 weeks, the next 14 days of the Diddy trial. Now, if you guys have tuned in before, you'll know that the last couple weeks I've been keeping up, starting with jury selection and went over the defense attorneys, and then the first 2 weeks so far of the testimonies. And now we're going to go into week 3 and 4 so I can catch us back up to closer to live time, because I only have a couple more weeks before I go on summer vacation. If you've clicked on this video, thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't watched the other videos, maybe go back so you have a little bit more context to my high level Cole's notes of this insane fucking case. And if you are interested in listening to week 3 and 4 of this trial, stick around and we'll jump right in. All right, babes, as mentioned, if you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this episode today. If you haven't watched the other videos, I suggest going back, or if you're familiar with the Diddy case, and if you've got yourself caught up to this timeline, then absolutely let's jump right in. But if not, I do have the last 3 weeks, like I said, posted from every Wednesday with Internet Insanity, going over the Diddy trial. As you guys might not know or know that on the podcast, I've talked about Hollywood and sex trafficking and all these things in Hollywood for a couple years now, and specifically did start talking about the Diddy case last December. So obviously, naturally, I had to cover it. But of course, this is not necessarily dragging on. It says that it's going to be it's alleged to be an 8 to 10 week case. And currently in the time that we're talking, I believe they're on week 7. So it could equally wrap up is it week 7? We're currently on week 6. Next week will be week 7, and week 8 will be the last week of June, beginning of July there. So it could hypothetically end there, and then it also could carry on for another 2 weeks after that, mid-July, which I will be in the middle of my break. So I will have to catch you guys up in August when I come back to posting again. But for now, let's go over week 3 and 4. So I was trying to go week by week because this case is so, and I'm not laughing because it's not funny, I'm just laughing at how I just thought that I'd be able to get through so much information and didn't realize the depth of this absolute insane lawsuit. And so I really wanted to do it week by week, but realizing the timeline and my timeline, and that's just not going to work. So we're going to go over, and this episode's going to be a little bit longer. I am not going to pop things up like I normally do, or what I've been learning to do in these YouTube videos, just so I can get a lot of this done and out to you guys. And when I come back in August, I promise I will get better at those things. So thank you guys again for sticking around as I learn how to become a YouTuber from being a podcaster. There's a lot more involved than just talking and clipping a few things. But yeah, we're going to get into the week 3 and 4 today. So it is going to be a little bit of a longer episode. We're going to go through this timeline, and then I'm going to jump off to a couple of the witnesses that are being brought on by the prosecution, and then we're going to kind of carry on the timeline until about June 6th. Okay, so also dialing back, so the first week there was a couple, like we said, there was security guards, there was hugely Cassie Ventura, then we heard from her friend as well, Carrie Morgan. We also heard from Kid Cudi. There was a bunch of testimonies that's happened the last couple of weeks. Now going into week 3 or 4, we're going to see some more of Diddy's employees, which we did last week as well. There's a handful of employees, and again, from my understanding, is because they're trying to build the case that, not only with a RICO case, you have to have certain components, from my understanding. And so you have to really also show that your enterprise was used to further your agenda, and that there was more people involved, and you use people, I believe, within your business and your empire and your enterprise for these criminal activities. And something that I'm not fully versed, you guys know that I've always said this is just Cole's notes from understanding from a I don't know, just from a creator's point of view, and calling about Hollywood and how fucked up it is. I'm nowhere close to a lawyer or understand American laws by any understanding. So please, more knowledgeable people sound off. I'm just high level. But from my understanding is that they're not, because at first I thought that they were trying to get him on sex trafficking Cassie. And so that's why I was a little bit confused, because it didn't seem like that was a part of the case at all. It was just, showing that she had been a part of it, and that they did really fucked up things, and that they were hiring prostitutes and sex workers and all that. And I didn't understand that it's actually the sex workers that they hired that is showing the sex trafficking, because they were hiring them to do things in bringing them over state lines to do those things, I guess, from my understanding, is where the issue is and where the sex trafficking is, not Cassie herself. And so I had that misunderstood from the beginning. So it was really interesting. I really enjoy the Law and Crime YouTube channel. What they're doing is they're recording live, and then they're having their reporter come back as they're taking breaks and reporting on what's going on live, and at the same time bringing on a bunch of expert lawyers to comment on cases like this from their point of view. So highly suggest following them, and Rotten Mango as well. She's doing an incredible job of really, these articles are really great, but they're just very high level because there's no recordings, because there's no audio, no video, nothing, and we're just going on transcripts and what reporters from their point of views are relaying. You know, these long episodes are really great to get deeper into them. Again, we're just talking high level, but a little bit deeper than some of these articles are alluding, because some of them, and we'll go through and you'll see why I jumped into deeper articles, because it was just really a little too high level for me. So we're going to go a little bit, not 2-3 hours every single day on the trial, but we're going to go a little bit then high level. So like I said, we had talked about 2 weeks of testimonies. Now let's go to week 3 and 4 of who's on the stand. Some key witnesses that I didn't talk about that I just wanted to bring back in. They also talked to the individuals that did the raids as well, but they also talked to someone named Joshua Croft, a computer forensic agent with Homeland Security Investigations, who said he extracted data from Ventura's laptops. Now, a lot of things that I've heard so far is that, you know, Cassie had these things too, so it wasn't just Combs that was in possession of those things, but there's a difference of her being in control, having those things, and him having some as well and using them to extort her and say, I'm going to release these things if you don't, or if you do X, Y, and Z. So yes, maybe she did have copies of them, thinking that maybe she had the only copies of those, but he also had other things. So I think, to me, from my understanding, is that's a little irrelevant if she had copies of things herself. She wasn't extorting him. Frederick Zemmour, the general manager of L'Hermitage Hotel in Beverly Hills, California, testified that internal notes showed that the hotel authorized an extra $1,000 when Combs stayed there to cover any room damages. That's kind of insane. And it sounded like that's what people kind of understood, is that when Diddy stayed there, and I think I spoke about this in other episodes, that it was known that they were going to have to pay a little bit more. And it didn't sound like they were like breaking shit and all that. It was just more a lot of baby oil, like the lube, and a lot of candle wax. Allegedly, that was like quite a big thing. And those two things and those are not easy things to get out, might I add. Not saying that anything would be fun, but you know, if it's booze or, I don't know, clothes or food, like sometimes that would be a little bit easier to clean. But baby oil and candle wax is probably, I feel like, one of the hardest things to get out. That's just my personal opinion. So no wonder why they're having to spend thousands. But like, isn't that kind of weird? And like, I do want to go off in the next season, I guess you would call it, is about weird shit that happens at hotels. Like, I just worked at one at a banquet hall for a small amount of time, and I seen weird shit. I can't imagine what the hotel industry is like, and it's shit like this that make me understand that there's bigger fucking crazier shit and rabbit holes than I know about. If all this stuff was always happening, and, you know, 15, 20 years later, we're hearing about it more and more. They really definitely signed a lot of NDAs out there, and a lot of people are tight-lipped for money, is what I've come to conclusion. There's also Mila Morales, a celebrity makeup artist, testified about a 2010 incident between Combs and Ventura, in which Combs became violent around Morales, and Ventura went to a party at Prince's house without Combs's permission. So yeah, I guess from my understanding is that Cassie went to this party, and she just kind of didn't mention it to Combs because she knew he was going to be upset. So she kind of just like let it happen. And then I guess he blew up after that as well, which is just super sad. So it's just, again, a lot of people corroborating the story of like, he really owned people. He really did this in front of a bunch of people and would threaten those people if they said anything, or, you know, paid them off. Or so, you know, they, from what I'm understanding, at first it sounded like maybe the prosecution was slow to build the case around it. But I think the way they've placed everybody, it's just like these things happen, and then people coming after corroborating that from the victims, the people in the empire that got used to advance these things, be a part of these criminal activities, quote unquote, to build that RICO case, from my understanding. So Tuesday they start, May 27th. So it's like there's a mix between victims and workers and people that were by proxy, like security guards or, you know, hotels, those people to all come together to line up these stories to really paint a picture that, you know, it's not just domestic abuse. He's not just a violent guy. You know, that's what they're trying to build. It's look at him using all these people, flexing all these things and doing all these things, and repeated. One of the lawyers I heard said that, you know, is it a little bit too much on the prosecution side to continue saying, like, you know, he's doing these things on repeat and keep showing the same story? Is it beating a dead horse? And what the lawyer was saying is that in the circumstances of the prosecution is that you want to beat a dead horse. You want to show the jury that this is something that is done time and time and time again. It's not just a one-time thing. Like, this is who he is as a person. It wasn't, I used to be like that. I was a bad person. I was on drugs. It was just like, no, you continually did this, and you continually use several people within your empire, not just one or two. I feel like that's what they're trying to paint. So let's start with May 27th. The jury heard testimony from Capricorn Clark, a former employee of Combs, who worked as his personal assistant from 2004 to 2006 as the marketing director for Sean John Women, then global brand director from 2007 to 2012. Clark was Ventura's creative director from 2016 to 2018. That's just very high level, like how they're saying it. From my understanding is that Capricorn was one of the most captivating witnesses of the whole entire thing. She was just very raw and honest and spoke just like a regular person, wasn't, you know, uptight, didn't necessarily want to be there, but also was just being herself and speaking how she felt and how she, you know, remembered it, and wasn't trying to be so cookie cutter and very transparent. But we'll finish this and then we'll go into a better article about her and her experience. Combs said he planned to kill Kid Cudi according to testimony. Clark said that in December 2011, Combs showed up to her house between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. and began banging on her door. When she opened it, she noted he was holding a gun and was furious. As he entered her home, he asked her about Miss Cudi. She said, "Get dressed. We're going to kill that N-word." Clark testified Combs told her. While Clark was on the stand under cross-examination, Combs' attorney Mark Agnifilo asked her to confirm that she told the defense attorney at a meeting in April 2024 that Combs wouldn't be in this mess if he had kept her around, in discussions about her returning to work for him. So just in this, it's from CNN. It's not doing a really good job to explain kind of the relationship and what all happened. So I found a better article to kind of go over to paint a little bit more of a picture. But again, I really, really suggest going to Rotten Mango and the Law and Crime channels to listen to their very detailed, because they're going over transcripts. They're going over very detailed every point of this. And it's so much more than what these articles are alluding to as well. And of course, more than I could possibly ever do, being a corporate girly and having the podcast doing it summer. Almost time for break. Okay, so let's get into Capricorn Clark a little bit more. So Diddy's one-time assistant, Capricorn Clark, took to the stand and was asked about physical threats from her former boss and about being accused for stealing from the disgraced rap mogul. Clark was asked where she grew up, and she talked about working for Def Jam Records before moving to Death Row Records, and was asked by the prosecution about its former chief, Suge Knight. Knight is a father of a friend's child, Clark said. Clark detailed a variety of jobs she performed for Diddy's organization, including being in charge of the women's division at Sean John, a clothing company. Clark was asked about her first day working for Diddy in 2004. She said Diddy took her to Central Park along with someone named Uncle Paulie, who was built like a linebacker, she described. Clark testified Diddy told her that since she'd worked for Suge Knight, if anything happened, he might have to kill her, prompting an objection from the defense. Judge Aaron Subramanian overruled. Clark told the jury she took the statement seriously, saying it had gravitas. Last week, another of Diddy's former assistants testified about an incident involving Knight, claiming Diddy gathered some guns and went looking for him during a visit in LA. Knight talked to TMZ about the incident, saying it likely would have escalated into violence had they run into each other the night in question. Clark said she witnessed Diddy in possession of a gun at her house. She testified he talked about having a problem with rapper 50 Cent. So again, in these, in between, when we're watching this Law and Crime, they were asking questions like, do you think that they'll bring up 50 Cent? Do you think they'll bring up, they'll bring up Tupac and Combs and all these alleged connections and all of that. And one of the lawyers said that basically what the prosecution is going to want to do is focus on very known, well-documented cases, especially with witnesses that are here. And if it's something that's kind of like hearsay, wishy-washy, it just could give the defense more opportunity to call for mistrials, because at that point it's all hearsay alleged unless they have concrete evidence of something. They said that they wouldn't bring things in here like the beef with rapper 50 Cent. You know, there's a deeper story to all of that, but bringing him on isn't necessarily going to paint the picture. It's just going to be chalked up as, you know, rapper beef. And they also don't want to necessarily have all these high profile individuals to distract the jury as well. Another reason why they're trying to keep Kanye out of the courtroom as well. And I would imagine with 50 Cent too, it kind of distracts from the original. Like if it has nothing to necessarily do with the RICO case, it just kind of waters things down. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway. But I do find it interesting, his Twitter, you know, and before that people might know, right? So it's just adding fuel to a fire that's not going to help the prosecution from my understanding. She also talked about being accused of stealing jewelry while working for Diddy. Clark said she was questioned for hours by Uncle Paulie and taken up to the 6th floor of a dilapidated place. She says the door was locked behind her and a heavy-set man was sitting at a folding table. She described 2 men the size of linebackers, and they said they told her she was there to take a lie detector test. Clark said she was told that if she failed the polygraph, they would throw her in the East River. That prompted defense objection and sidebar with the judge. Clark said that the lie detector test ordeal lasted 5 days, as they returned to the same location again and again. She said she was not free to leave during these interrogations. She said she was allowed to return to work after that. When asked why she didn't leave the company, Clark said, "If I left, they think I stole it." And it sounds like that's happened quite a few times in his journey here in his empire, is that he has had people take lie detector tests, and he's very, very, very against stealing. I mean, who's for stealing, but I guess it's something that's super important to him, so he presses them really hard. And that was one thing that I noticed in listening that they really press Capricorn for, is like, well, why'd you go back? If he was being such a terrible person, why did you go back? Da 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 da. And she was pretty much saying, you know, like, I thought that this was my career. This is, you know, I thought maybe I was wrong. You know, we couldn't really say stuff. So I didn't know that this was who he was at first. And when all these things started piling up, then she started, you know, understanding how bad it was, and then it started taking a toll on her mentally. She also said she got about 4 hours of sleep at night and was paid $55,000 per year and never got paid overtime. She was also asked about Diddy's hotel stay and said she took cameras and small bottles of baby oil and lube in a bag every time. Last week, another assistant also told about Diddy's preoccupied with employees stealing from him and testifying about polygraph tests. Yes, see? Judge Supermanian discussed testimony from an investigator and a key witness from last week surrounding the events of Scott Mescudi, a.k.a. the rapper Kid Cudi, whose Porsche was destroyed in his driveway by a Molotov cocktail back in 2012. Prosecutors objected to an investigator's report. Defense says DNA evidence from the arson scene was consistent with a female. Prosecutors say the DNA issue could mislead the jury. So I think at that point they're kind of leading to, like, was it Capricorn? Because again, there's so much more to do with this. You guys have to dive in, and everything that I'm saying, please, like, comment in the comment section if I've got something wrong. I've been listening to videos for weeks now. I definitely could get details wrong, and I'm just reading from articles the best that I can. But from my understanding is that Capricorn knew that Cassie was talking to Kid Cudi, and that she had allegedly called Cassie and was like, "Hey, just so you know, Diddy knows we showed up, like, they were like, he's looking at his house, whatever." And I guess when Diddy got back in the car, Capricorn had called from this burner phone, and she had changed her name to Cassie's name to Stormy, but Diddy wasn't falling for it. So he picked up the phone, called, and realized that she had called Cassie, and there was like this whole thing. So this whole thing blew up, and Diddy knew about Cudi and all of this. And then after this, then the Molotov cocktail happens, you know, all those things. Before we get into that, because the next interview about the Molotov cocktail, because I guess another thing to make sure this RICO case goes through is that they have to prove arson. And so this is one of the ways that they're trying to prove arson is damage done to to Kid Cudi's Porsche. And what they're saying is that the DNA didn't come back as Diddy's, but it did come back as female. So I guess what they were trying to maybe allege there is like, was it Capricorn Clark that did that, or someone in Diddy's entourage? Maybe, maybe not. She didn't say she did that. But also at the same time, is she going to admit to that? I don't know. I'm not saying it's her. I'm just saying, was that why they tried to drop that? And is that why that got removed? Because they're like, hey, yo, you can't say that. There's no real proof of who that is. Don't make that misleading that it was Capricorn that did that. But it did happen at very strange times. Now, one thing that I did find interesting is I believe it was the officer that went to Cudi's house after the Diddy break-in, or while they alleged Diddy break-in at Kid Cudi's house, was that he seen a vehicle fly by and he remembered the license plates. And when he ran the license plate, I believe it was a black Escalade, it was license plate to Bad Boy Records. So, you know, can't say it is for sure, but these things are weird, right? So just all these little pieces, like when you're just reading articles like this, or you're just listening to high level videos like this, you do really miss the depths of those things. It is crazy how intricate this story is. But let's carry on. We're going to be here forever. So Kid Cudi's Porsche was targeted with Molotov cocktail made from 40-ounce Old English bottle and designer handkerchief. The targeted arson attack on Kid Cudi's Porsche's convertible was carried out with a Molotov cocktail fashioned from a malt liquor bottle and a silky designer handkerchief. A fire investigator testified at Sean Diddy Combs' bombshell federal trial Wednesday. Los Angeles Fire Department Inspector Lance Jimenez told Manhattan jurors he spotted the 40-ounce Old English 80 malt liquor bottle inside the ritzy Porsche after he was called to the scene of the attempted firebombing in 2012. A bottle reeked of gasoline and there was a burnt, silky-like designer handkerchief nearby. Inside, I observed the bottle, odor of gasoline, and the handkerchief there, so I made a general observation that this might have been a Molotov cocktail, he said. The fire inspector, who noted a disposable lighter was found nearby, described the bottle as a makeshift firebomb. The details emerged after the renowned rapper and actor whose name is Scott Muscudi, aka Kid Cudi, testified last week that he immediately knew Combs had something to do with it when his luxury vehicle was damaged. Asked on Wednesday by prosecutors if the incident was random, Jimenez responded, "In my opinion, this was targeted. The car was not visible from the street. I believe the Porsche was targeted close to the home. It's also an area where you don't see a lot of crime activity. My experience, I personally feel like this was targeted." Jurors were shown photos of the Molotov cocktail as well as the damage inflicted to the convertible, including the red melted seats, burn patterns on the floor, and heat-damaged doors. Despite the damage, Jimenez testified that he had seen a much worse. He also said the silky fabric of the handkerchief ultimately made the bomb less effective and limited the overall damage to the car. Well, that sucks. That backfired. The cloth was a silky-like material and it fell out of the bottom. The fire smoldered out and didn't cause the case damage that it was intended for. If the gasoline-soaked handkerchief had remained in the bottle, it would have caused it to explode, he testified, adding that the fire could have spread to the surrounding foliage near Muscudi's Los Angeles home. It wasn't as extensive. I've seen car burns all the way down to the frame because of these firebombs. During his show-stopping testimony last week, Cudi detailed how Combs was allegedly jealous over the budding relationship with Cassie Ventura. I reached out to Combs after my car caught fire and told him we need to finally meet up and talk, he told jurors. He'd been waiting to talk to me. After the fire, I thought this is getting out of hand and I need to talk to him. You think? A little out of hand? Just a little, just a petit peu out of hand. Right? So that was Wednesday, May 28th. The police and fire investigators looked into Kid Cudi's allegations, testified. The arson investigator determined that his car was targeted and the fire was not random. On the same day, one of Cassie's best friends, Deonte Nash, a celebrity stylist, testified that on multiple occasions he saw Combs assault Ventura and heard him threaten to withhold her music or release sex tapes of her. Nash also testified that Ventura told him he had sex with other men while Combs watched, even though she didn't want to, though she never explicitly explained the term freak off to him. Nash, who worked for Combs' company for years, also testified about the times he worked for Combs, about times when Combs was violent towards him. So again, little snapshot, but it sounded like Deonte was amazing for the prosecution and the fact that he was just very to the point, very blunt, but he also raise the energy of the room a little bit by being a little bit sassy. And it sounds like the defense was trying to be sassy back to him, and it just wasn't having it, and it wasn't the right approach. They tried to kind of control the tone and the narrative, and Deonte just wasn't having it. But again, very small clippets, and not that I don't think that this is important, because I do think it's another way where it's like, not only is this a friend, but this was someone that was working for Cassie and Combs at the same time. So very, very, very great testimony. I, again, highly suggest going to Rotten Mango to listen to her description of that. But if we don't carry on, we will never get done. So let's carry on to May 29th. An ex-employee of Combs testified under a pseudonym Mia. She said that the music mogul physically and sexually assaulted her repeatedly when she worked for him, and testified she felt trapped with no safe way to report the abuse. Mia said she never initiated sexual contact with Combs or told him she wanted to have sex with him. See, that's all they wrote here in that, and I just thought that was a little insane because there's so much more to Mia. Another thing is that someone in the court, a journalist from my understanding, not one from like a big source, but more of kind of a YouTuber, has allegedly released information on Mia, and that's a big no-no. One big reason why people testify, and they do in these cases, the federal government is supposed to protect them, protect their identity. And I guess there are ways that they can do that. I didn't know that, where they can either ask everyone to leave and it's just the jury that sees them. They can block their juries from seeing them, and they can, I guess there's a bunch of different ways. And this one, it was just like, you don't know who Mia is, you don't know what she looks like, you know nothing about her. However, the court sketches, do depict a little bit of her, so it does give you an idea, even though they blurred her face out when people are blabbing. So I'm definitely not going to add to that and do my best to ignore that information. But I think we need to talk about this a little bit more, because Mia not only was an employee of Combs, she was also abused by Combs as well. So, it's not just a romantic relationship. Again, they're saying, hey, it's just domestic violence with Cassie. But here's a couple times now where we've seen some aggression towards Capricorn, some seems like extortion, and some awful witness behavior to bad behavior to now over to Mia, who again was supposed to be protected and doesn't seem to be. And again, that article on CNN is just so short, so we're going to dive into it a little bit more here. A woman identified only by pseudonym Mia, a former assistant of Sean Combs, continued her testimony for the third day on Monday as his sex trafficking and racketeering trial. Mia testified that she continued sending loving text messages to Combs years after her job ended in 2017 because she was brainwashed. The woman used the word as defense lawyer Brian Steele confronted her with skepticism and even suggested she had fabricated her claims. Steele had Mia read out loud to the jury for a numerous amount of loving texts she sent to Combs, including one in 2019 in which she said she had a nightmare that she was trapped in an elevator with singer R. Kelly and Combs rescued her. And this person who sexually assaulted you came to your rescue? Steele asked. He rephrased, asking if she really dreamt of being saved by a man who terrorized you and caused you PTSD. Prosecutors objected and the judge sustained it. Combs had pleaded not guilty to multiple counts on a former indictment accusing him of a pattern of abuse towards ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura and others. In an August 29, 2020 message to Combs, Mia recalled happy highlights from her 8 years working for him, such as drinking champagne at the Eiffel Tower at 4 a.m. and rejecting Mick Jagger's offer to take her home, saying she remembered only the good times. In the same message, Mia mentioned once feeling bamboozled by a woman. Steele asked why she didn't say Combs had bamboozled her as well, given her accusations. Because I was still brainwashed, Mia answered. Asked to explain, Mia said that in an environment where the highs were really high and the lows were really low, she developed huge confusion in trusting her instincts. I was punished whenever Puff would be violent and I would react, confusing me and making me think I did something wrong. Nobody around batted an eye. He was still praised by everyone around him and the public, Mia added. When Steele suggested that her assault claims were made up, Mia responded, I have never lied in this courtroom, and I never will lie in this courtroom. Everything I have said is true. Mia testified that Combs required her to carry around a pocket video camera to record him before he decided to hire full-time videographers. Steele asked Mia if she recorded any videos of Combs in a moment of rage. Absolutely not. No, I would never be allowed to film that. I was filming whatever he wanted me to film, she said. She added that if she had ever filmed him in those moments, it would have been a huge break of trust, loyalty, and confidentiality. Steele went on to ask Mia if she told anybody about the abuse she said she experienced by Combs while it was happening. Do you have anything where you wrote to a friend, family member, police officer, anybody and said this is what's going on? I'm being assaulted, berated, anything? Steele asked Mia. No, the only time I reached out for help was very subtly to people in the office, but not disclosing things that people hadn't witnessed, she responded. Mia told the court that nobody around batted an eye when Combs would act out and that he was still praised by everyone in his circle. I was always constantly seeking his approval. He was my authority figure, my only authority figure, she added. When Steele asked Mia about Combs finding out about private messages between her and Ventura, she asked Combs of stealing her phone many times. He has stolen Cassie's phone many times and he has put tracking devices on her car. I'm not sure what he's capable of. I was terrified, she said. Mia said that she was very close with Ventura, but she was not allowed to tell her the truth about a lot of things. Whatever story Puff told me, I had to uphold, she said. One of the worst parts was being put in the middle of and having to cover up for Puff to Cass, which he forced me to do constantly. Steele asked Mia if she ever told Ventura that she should end things with Combs. Not in the way I wish I could have, she said. Prosecutor Madison Smizer went through many of Mia's social media posts during cross-examination. Mia confirmed that promoting Combs's event and projects was part of her job. When Smizer asked Mia what Diddy would do if he thought she wasn't doing her job, she said, I would screamed at, humiliated, made fun of, and my job would be threatened. She also said her Instagram posts for Diddy's birthday were part of her job, and if she didn't make the post, she would be in trouble. Mia said she felt like she couldn't leave her job with Diddy. I would have been stripped of all my credibility, would have been able to get a job in the same industry that I wanted, and would have lost everything I knew. She told the court that she tried to leave her job. His chief of staff told her to go back, and she also feared for her safety. I just knew his power and his wrath, she said. When Smizer asked Mia about speaking to Human Resources, she said a former employee was fired after reporting abuse to Ventura. Human Resources only punished me unjustly, also fired Kayla for even discussing Cassie's abuse. They wouldn't have believed me and I would have been fired immediately. Smizer also asked Mia what she thought would happen if she had disclosed that Diddy had sexually assaulted her. That I wouldn't be believed, I would be wiped out, I would be abused, fired, and somehow made out to look like the crazy person making everything up. After Mia stopped working for Diddy in 2017, she said she worked for Madonna for 8 months. Did Mr. Combs assist you in getting that job, she asked. Absolutely not, Mia said. So again, a lot of these articles are kind of more alluding to or the defense is trying to allude to okay, but he was abusive, but you stuck around. And you got all these things, so you stuck around, right? So if it was so bad, you should have left. And it's just have you all been in an abusive relationship? I know that that's their job. I know that that's what they have to pay, but oh my goodness. So just going back to this CNN timeline. So Friday, May 30th, Mia continued direct testimony and testified that she tried to run away from the job multiple times, but she felt she would never be able to be hired again. Later in the cross-examination, defense attorney Brian Steele challenged Mia to explain why she worked there from 2009 to 2017. In an abusive relationship, there's a cycle of violence, she said. I was young and manipulated and eager to survive. The defense also confronted Mia with 36 warm and friendly social media posts made about Combs in years after the alleged sexual assault she described to the jury. The jury also saw loving texts Mia sent to Combs years after she stopped working for him, some as recently as 2023. The testimony of Mia concluded following the morning cross-examination by defense attorney Sylvia Oken, area director of sales and marketing at Beverly Hills Hotel, took the stand later as custodial witness for the prosecution to testify that some of the bills from Combs' hotel stays included extra charges for cleaning and damage. So again, they're doing the whole circle. We're doing a whole circle of shit. So Tuesday, June 3rd, now we're going to get into another type of worker. This isn't a worker for Diddy, but someone that Diddy paid money for to cover up for the 2016 hotel video. A couple more days, guys, and we're going to be wrapping this up. So Eddie Garcia, who worked as a security officer in the Intercontinental Hotel in March 2016, testified that Combs gave him $100,000 in cash to obtain surveillance of him assaulting Ventura. Combs had Garcia sign a non-disclosure agreement on company letterhead at the time and declaration maintaining that there was no copies of it. So let's go into that a little bit more. Much of today's testimony spent revisiting Diddy's March 2016 assault on Cassie Ventura, an incident at the Intercontinental Hotel in LA that was captured on security video and shown to jurors at the start of this trial. Eddie Garcia, the hotel's security supervisor, testified that Diddy and his team desperately wanted to get the sole copy of the video and prevent it from getting out. In exchange for $100,000 divided among members of the hotel's security team, Garcia said he signed a non-disclosure agreement that called for his silence and the destruction of evidence. Here's what else to know about today's testimony. Garcia testified that he was so nervous about the NDA that he didn't really read it before signing it. Diddy presented stacks of cash in brown paper bag, added Garcia, who said he bought a used car with his $30,000 share. Garcia also said he wasn't initially truthful to the police when he was talked about the assault. On cross-examination, the defense pointed out that the NDA didn't stop Garcia from speaking about it in legal proceedings, a line of questioning presumably intended to undermine the government's potential claim of obstruction of justice. Going on to the next one after that. So from my understanding too, again, going into this a little bit more, it sounded like Diddy was harassing them quite a bit to get this from them at the time. He was saying that, this isn't just him that wants it, that Cassie doesn't want this out either, that it was just a misunderstanding and it didn't look good. It was just a spat between the two of them, and how Eddie's his savior, Eddie the man, really, what would you call that? Like love bombing him to get what he wants. And I guess he just kind of showed up. He put $100,000 in his money counter, which they did find when they were raiding his house, these money counters, and gave him the $100,000. And again, depending on where this money comes from, where all these deposits come from, if this is money from his company and he paid that off to have some obstruction of justice, to destroy evidence of abuse and potential criminal activity, that don't look good. But again, that's where I said with NDAs, like, even if there is a clause in there that you say that you couldn't talk to police, again, obviously you can't do anything if the government's coming down on you and subpoenaing you, saying you need to come to court, because I think that it just leads to more. And I was asking last week or the week before too, I'm wondering if these witnesses, are they protected? And it sounds like they are protected if they are witnesses in these type of cases, meaning that if Diddy does win this case and everything's overturned, he doesn't go to jail, nothing happens, can he sue them for defamation? And it sounds like no, because they're protected. Now, are they protected from him outside of the court of law? I'm not sure. I don't know what that means. I'm not saying anything, but it sounds like at least for legal purposes, Diddy can't go after them for anything that they said in this lawsuit. So that was interesting. So what is next? So Wednesday, June 4th, a forensic video expert testified that March 2016 surveillance video showing Diddy assaulting Ventura at a hotel in Los Angeles was not manually altered. Frank Piazza, the expert, also testified that he enhanced 10 sex videos originally recorded in 2012 and 2014 that were recovered from a laptop Ventura gave the government under the user profile Frank Black, an alias used by Diddy. So again, getting in different experts to be like, this isn't, especially with all the AI generation stuff now too, I can understand that that's an added level of stress in these types of situations, being like, is this altered? But sounds like experts are saying, no, bitch, this is real. Another really important one, and one that was, I guess, one of the reasons that they tried to go for a mistrial, I guess, in the last coming days, which, spoiler alert, got denied. But what they're saying is that this next witness that I'm going to talk about just briefly, that the stories are not corroborating with Cassie's past trial or past testimony, I believe. And so therefore, they're saying that the government knew that this wasn't right, and that Brianna was going to be not sharing the truth on the stand. And I'm not entirely sure where that goes. We'll catch up in the next couple weeks of where that went. But here's a little bit on Brianna Bongolin. A friend of Ventura's testified that Combs held her over a 17-story balcony and threw her onto the balcony furniture in September 2016. Attorneys for Combs previously denied Bongolin's allegations in a statement to CNN. Bongolin testified that the incident occurred after Combs began banging on the door of Ventura's apartment in LA while she was asleep. On cross-examination, the defense challenged her memory on the balcony incident and noted that Ventura had described it differently in her lawsuit against Combs. Yeah, so that's what it was. So in her lawsuit to Combs, allegedly, there was a text message saying that she didn't know that that he had been aggressive, but in this lawsuit, she's saying that she witnessed it, or they're saying they witnessed it. And from my understanding, that was correct for Ventura's statement at the beginning of this case. So I'm not sure what that means exactly, but find that interesting. And I guess it's causing a lot more commotion than not. So on June 5th, during continued cross-examination of Mongolan, defense attorney Nicole Westmoreland said that Combs was on tour on the East Coast and Ventura was with him at the time that she said the balcony incident occurred. Westmoreland showed that the jury records from the Trump International Hotel in New York reflected expenses listed under Frank Black and an alias that Diddy used, including hotel dining receipts on those days. So again, that's where they're kind of saying, like, you've obviously got this wrong. And maybe they got the dates wrong, right? I don't know. Maybe that's what it is, because again, I wouldn't fucking remember what was going on. With all the weed that I smoked, there's no way I would remember. Thank God I don't fucking hang out with shady people, and if I ever get myself in these situations, I am definitely going to record everything in different places, because I would never sit here and fucking claim to remember any of this stuff. Another big thing that came up, it sounds like the judge said that he could exclude Combs from court if he keeps making further attempts to interact with the jury. Diddy was nodding in their direction during testimony from Bongolan. So it sounds like, too, from what I've heard, is that he's been doing this quite frequently, where he'll sigh or he'll shake his head, like kind of going against whatever the witness is saying, and being very interactive with the jury, and it sounds like journalists, and the judge is getting a little bit upset about it and has repeated this several times that he is not to do that whatsoever, and that is getting him in trouble in the coming weeks. Continuing on, Enrique Santos, a forensic analyst, testified about extracting data from 3 iPhones belonging to Ventura. A woman using the pseudonym Jane testified that Diddy pressured her to participate in sexual hotel nights. She said that these sexual encounters, which included a male entertainer, always followed a pattern and sometimes lasted over 24 hours. She also testified that she just wanted to have sex with Diddy, but not other men, and also went along with it because she wanted to make him happy and feared losing him, she said. She said she felt obligated to participate in these encounters, in part because Diddy paid her rent. She's testified that she got to a point where money from Diddy was her main source of income aside from child support she got from her son's father. So this is where they're going into, sorry, that was weird how they put that. So I'm assuming that Enrique was testifying about alleging that these videos are real. And again, the evidence gets shown to the jury. Sometimes they had headphones, so not everyone gets to hear. Like, they did see videos of the freak-offs. They've watched some of those things, but not everyone gets to see that, not until after an evidence, and they prepare all this kind of evidence. And then they're going into another pseudonym, Jane, who was also another victim of Diddy. And we're going to kind of go over this just a little bit, but her majority of that is next week. So we'll go over that in the next episode. But one thing that the lawyers did mention is that getting a pseudonym and having an alias in court isn't an easy task. That is something that actually is very hard to get, and it has to be very valid. So there's obviously reasons why these 2 individuals are using these pseudonyms. Sorry, terrible speaking English. Pseudonyms. And it sounds like the court is bringing up, like, hey, Mia's name got leaked, her information got leaked. Are we going to make sure that Jane is also protected? Because again, remember, all of these people, these people are not suing Diddy, and maybe they are on the side. Some of them are doing their own civil suits. This is a federal case where the government is subpoenaing these witnesses, and most of them do not want to be there. But they either have to, or they could get in trouble themselves, and it probably doesn't look the best. So again, most of these people don't want to be here, especially a lot of the victims, to have to relive what they went through and go through massive criticism from the defense, from journalists, from social media, all over the place, right? So there's a big reason, obviously, why these women are being protected. So let's just wrap off with June 6th. Jane continued her time on the stand. She testified she didn't know how many times she told Diddy she wanted to stop their hotel nights, but typically it was in a text message. When she tried to tell him over the phone or in person, he would overpower the conversation and get defensive, belittling, and dismissive, she testified. Jane described feeling heartbroken and so cheap after Diddy showed off a new dating relationship with another woman shortly after participating in hotel night on her birthday, she testified. I didn't want to do those things with you on my birthday, but I wanted to make sure we had a good time, she wrote in a text message to Diddy and read out loud in court. I feel so cheap once again. Jane testified that her shoulders and back would be hurting during hotel night because she would have to stay in certain positions for many hours, adding, that's what my partner wanted to see. She testified that she would often get urinary tract infections and yeast infections as a result of these hotel nights, and at times couldn't fully recover before the next hotel night. She'll return to stand on Monday. And that's, we're going to end that for these follow-ups. But another thing too, that from what I understand, is when Capricorn Clark was doing these things and being a personal assistant, this was also at the time of Kim Porter as well. And unfortunately, again, people talk about bringing Kim Porter into this, but again, unfortunately, that beautiful soul is not here. But I truly wonder what she went through. And I truly wonder what his fucking kids know and what they don't, and what they're thinking of all this, because apparently they're just posted and living their life, just doing their thing. And I guess, I don't know if this isn't phasing them, because at the end of the day, whether he gets charged with RICO or not, all of these things, most of them are being completely validated by many, many people. And so maybe, I don't know, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't know these things, but if they don't get him on this, like, his reputation has to be completely annihilated. And some people were saying that that's why there's so many people around him that are in his life that are supporting him, because if he does go through with this RICO case and they take everything, that they're essentially taking everything away from all of the people in his life as well. And if any other businesses that are wrapped up into this get wrapped up into this, and he does get proven to be guilty, then I'm sure there's going to be even more that comes from this as well. So I think that's why a lot of people are going to quote unquote not rat him out, but work with the government to protect themselves from losing everything. Again, this isn't just a civil lawsuit where we're going to have some money and a little bit of a tainted reputation. This is a RICO, take everything that was involved from you, all of your assets, and throw you in jail forever, and affect everyone around you, everyone that did business that can be caught up into this as well. So that, it's just wild. So I know we got a couple more weeks. So that was testimonies week 3 and 4, hearing a little bit more from people, not just victims themselves, but people that were assistants, people that were security guards and cameras, and all, like, security guard cameras. I am exhausted, y'all. I'm trying my hardest. And next week we'll go into week 5 and 6. Again, right now I believe we're live in week 6. So we'll see how things go in the couple weeks. I'll try my best to update you before my break. But if you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy my Cole's notes from this insane lawsuit. Again, guys, if you want to know more, there's so much to it. The details are absolutely insane. Not anything that I'm talented enough to bring to you guys, not yet anyway. The YouTubers that I hope to be one day, but again, go just search it. There's so many different people. Again, huge shout out to Rotten Mango and her team, as well as Law and Crime, because I have been following them deeply and going through all the different news stations, reading all these articles. So I hope that was a good summary for you for week 3 and 4. And again, stick around for week 5 and 6 next week. Thank you guys again so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, bye.